Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bang on Sales Show. I'm your host, Mark Bangs, and today my guest is none other than Dave Sweeney. Dave is Sales Enablement Executive for Leyton, and we just agreed that anything I say about him is probably going to be selling him short if I just throw a job title out there. So, Dave, it's great to have you on. Yeah, how you doing? And maybe tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, doing good, thank you. That none other than feels like a slightly over the top introduction, but I'll take
Oh,
it. um, no, I'm doing good. It is, I mean, the sun is finally shining in Scotland. Winter apparently is over. It lasted about a year, but we're
yep.
there. Um, so yeah, like you say, I just started as sales enablement exec at Leyton, which is a financial services business, last October. Um, and yeah, been kind of getting into all things enablement since then. Prior to that, I spent 5 years in the recruitment world, um, in enablement for the kind of 2, 3 years at the end of that. And prior to that, pushing 10 years in sales. Probably wouldn't say I was ever the best salesperson, but I think you learn to be good at enablement by learning what doesn't work, right?
Mm.
So maybe it helped in the long run. And yeah, other than that, I am social co-chair for the Enablement Squad, which is a sort of sales and revenue enablement kind of community, Slack community. So go and join; it's definitely worth it. Um, and outside of that, slightly obsessed by all things guitar and loud aggressive music related. But there we go.
Nice. Yeah, that's a separate conversation we need to have for sure. So,
We'll be here for 3 hours if you start me on that.
yeah, yeah. Awesome, awesome. So, one of the topics that you brought up with me before we started recording, which I know is quite current for you, is I'm going to throw this out very broadly, onboarding. So tell me about that. What's the approach? Where do you think companies go wrong, and how are you approaching it these days?
It's a massive topic, right? But as a salesperson who's been onboarded at 3 or 4 separate companies, and then getting into onboarding as a sales enablement kind of function, um, it strikes me as that we focus often too much on this idea of time to success. So there's this crazy celebration when the SDR books their first meeting, when the AA or whatever the kind of closer's job title is, closes that first deal or leads their first meeting, themselves without being shadowed by a manager. And that's great. But to me, the kind of hidden truth to that is that most of that is luck. That SDR who books a meeting in their second week at a company, maybe even first week, brilliant, fantastic, you've done that. But your pipeline is so small at that point that you're relying more on the person who happened to speak to you that day
Mhm.
than I've taken on board these new skills. I've been practicing. I've got this new knowledge that I'm kind of demonstrating. Time to consistency seems like a more important measure to me. You're a new SDR. When did you book your fifth, your 10th, your 15th meeting? Because that suggests not only have you got a bit of luck, because let's face it, sales needs luck, but you've also managed to demonstrate that you know how to source a good prospect. You know how to have good conversations. You might not be successful every time, but you can turn that conversation into the meeting booking consistently. And you've taken on board what's been trained, you've been coached well. It's a metric that involves every part of the onboarding process. It's not just you've been in a training room all day, now go do this. It's what did you learn from the training? What did you then get from coaching that helped you take that theory and put it into practice? And what have you then done yourself? You can have your own style, your own methods. No one should be told not to do that because we're all individuals, right? So I think flipping that focus on success to consistency is a big thing. I don't think it's talked about enough in onboarding, which is a bit of an obsession at the moment because I'm in the process of revamping an onboarding program. But that's the goal.
Do you, do you anticipate a a slump, as in? I guess I'll just provide some context. So, I mean, I've seen this multiple times for myself over my career, where you come into a role, you're keeping it very simple, right? Because you don't really understand fully the product, the industry, your ICP, and so on. So you just have a small set of basic questions that you're asking. You're almost approaching it with more curiosity. And then as your knowledge starts to grow, at least I'm guilty of this, you get a bit too smart for your own good, and you become convoluted in your approach. So then the
Yep.
conversation sounds good. And you almost have to come full circle to realize, hang on, I just need to keep it simple, go back to basics. So do you anticipate that with people? Is that built into how you approach it, or well, yeah.
Yes, is the short answer,
Okay.
and I've been there as well. I think was it Gallup or Gartner? I forget who now had this graph of the kind of the onboarding curve that kind of starts up here, then drops, and then slowly rises again. You hit the nail on the head with it. It's that genuine curiosity you have when you're new. Everything you ask, you don't know the answer that you're going to get back. Whereas a couple of weeks, 3 weeks into a role, you start realizing that variations on a theme, yes, but the questions you ask in your discovery calls will typically get the same responses. And you start to learn what those are, and then you almost start scripting your response because you feel like you know what you should be saying. And then the genuine curiosity disappears. And then on the flip side of that, you've got all the knowledge that you're building. So what you don't have yet is the ability to very, very quickly parse which bits of that knowledge are relevant and valuable to the conversation you're having right now. So you feature bash, you just go, this is everything I know. And then you talk yourself out of the meeting or the deal. It's very, very common. I think every salesperson can probably relate to that. I know I've done it in the past. So I think an onboarding program needs to balance the risk of information overload with the necessity of that information, and make sure people have the time to genuinely practice using that information, that knowledge, those skills in reality, ideally before you move on to the next one. So a lot of onboarding programs I've been through do this thing where you talk about something different almost every day. And we're at a point now where if you're in a cold calling kind of heavy sales organization, which I am, call connection rates are lower than they've ever been. Conversation rates to those connected calls are lower than they've ever been for most sales teams. So if you tell someone, here is a new questioning framework, here is a new objection handling, thought process, and then you say, right, go and test that. They might make 50, 60 dials that day and not speak to a human, never mind have a conversation. And then they come back tomorrow and you go, here's another one. And it ends up just building up all this kind of little fragments of information about each topic you've discussed, but no actual genuine practice of using them. Even if they're getting good quality coaching after the training of, this is how we use this daily. Go listen to these calls, you see it in practice. That's different to actually doing it yourself. And I think there's a horrible dilemma for most onboarding programs at the moment, and sales training generally, which is unless people are actively practicing the skills they're learning, then why are we teaching them? Mm-hmm. And it's a real challenge at the moment, especially when prospecting is really tough. I think we all know this, regardless of what you're selling. Salespeople are speaking to less prospects now, at least than when I was kind of still selling, even, what's that, 4 years ago now. I think it's dropped significantly even in that short period. So there's a lot to balance there, though.
What do you see as the solution?
Wow. I am not actually sure there is one, which is sad to say.
Make more dials. Get on the phone.
This is it. There's this dichotomy in sales at the moment with do more with less, i.e. we have less budget for tech, we have less budget for enablement, we have less budget for training. We may even have less budget for people. A lot of sales teams are smaller than they were 12 months ago. But at the same time, the people who are there are being told to just do more. Because we're at the point where there's this diminishing return to the activity we are doing. So we do more of it. And you've got this kind of cross of curves that are damaging each other. So do more with less is the right mantra, but it's been done in the wrong way. It's been done by taking resources away rather than by channeling resources into the right places. So an example would be multi-channel. we all talk about this as if it's a thing where you can just say it and people will do it. There's much more to it than that. Just even social selling, take that as an example. If that's one of your channels, we've got AI tools appearing now. And I actually just posted about it this morning. I'm seeing loads and loads of comments that jump out as a human didn't write that. And then you look at the job title of the person and it's SDR, it's AE. And it's a person who feels they should be engaging with content because they've been told it helps. They've found a tool, maybe not they personally, but their management, even their enablement team, have found a tool that can help them do that. But it's helping them copy and paste generic, meaningless engagement en masse. So we're ticking the multi-channel box, but it's not actually got us anything. So the answer to what's the question, how do we solve this, is kind of slow down, if there is one. I think the last 4 or 5 years in sales has been really interesting because I think AI is now starting to pick up the problem where tools like, and I'm not judging them by naming them here, right? Salesloft, Outreach, Apollo. We've got a crossover in problems there where the tool itself isn't the problem, but it's the obsession with sequences, automation, doing things en masse that we sort of broke sales outreach for ourselves. And I think we need to slow down, rein things right back in again to really address those concerns, particularly from an onboarding perspective, because the tools that we now have can enable someone who's never sold before on day one to send 1,000 emails, connect with 1,000 people on LinkedIn. And then where do they go from there? Because they're not going to get the results they want from that. But they can. It's very difficult to stop them unless you've got the right measures and the right kind of enablement, I suppose, in place. So a slightly rambling answer because there's lots and lots of things that feed into that.
I get it.
But
100%. And I think hopefully this isn't too much of a tenuous link or segue into what was going to be our next talking point. But I think zooming
go on away, go for it.
Bit, it's I'm gonna make a very smooth segue here. So the other thing we were talking about was sales theory versus practice, right? And I think that it's similar to, or at least relevant to what you were just talking about, where you've almost got like sellers thrown onto this treadmill of different ideas, different tools, different methodologies, and so on, without much thought, or maybe not enough thought put into, hang on, let's just slow down and think, how do we put this into practice? Because ultimately it's about human conversation. Yes, there needs to be a commercial aspect to all of this, particularly in more complex sales. But there's a human conversational element to this, which I think is sorely lacking, whether that's on LinkedIn, social, like you're talking about, or phone calls, face to face, whatever it may be. So again, very broad one for you, Dave, but practice versus theory, theory versus practice. Could you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I think the theory of sales methods, sales processes, all of that is useful. And I think it can have a big impact, but I think we need to talk about it in 2 different languages. There is sales theory, sales methodologies from the perspective of sales enablement, sales leadership. And then there is sales method and practice from the perspective of an actual seller. And they're not necessarily going to need to be the same thing. We can take, medical medpick as an example. It's probably important that a seller in an organization that uses that framework has a sort of understanding of what it is, why it exists, why this field has suddenly appeared in Salesforce that they have to complete because, salespeople don't like admin. I think I can still say that. I used to be one. There needs to be a valid reason why we are being told to do something. And then an output. What do we get from that? Whereas when that same salesperson is on a discovery call, maybe they're in a demo or a meeting, are they necessarily thinking, what does that acronym mean again? Which stage am I at here? Who is this? Is this my economic buyer? Probably not, because it's not natural language. And I think the method can kind of supersede the practice a little too often. Whereas I think the way I phrased it when we were talking before is a sales methodology is either a qualification kind of checklist or it's a pipeline management tool. some salespeople may find it very, very helpful in the conversation itself. That's fine. There's no silver bullets in sales. There's no one size fits all. There's always going to be someone that finds something useful. But I think we need to almost translate the theory into, so this is what you actually need to do when you're talking to a person. These are the questions to ask. This is how you open up a prospect to have a genuinely good flowing conversation, because that's what leads to the best clients at the end of the day as well. And I don't think we focus on that enough when we talk about sales theory. It becomes too much about us ticking our boxes and not necessarily enough about, there's this phrase, buyer enablement, being peddled a lot at the moment. We forget that in the process, largely because most people don't actually know how to buy what we're selling them. And our sales method doesn't help us show them that.
Very true. Very true. And you know, having better quality conversations and understanding how to ask good questions and the active listening, that's what gets you to the answers to tick those boxes anyway, because that's what helps people open up and understand why you're asking it, why it's relevant, how it's going to enable them to make a better decision, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think even simple things, I think that there's a lot of good back to basics that we could do. Like, I listen to calls on an almost daily basis. And one of the things I hear a lot is something I know I used to be guilty of, which is a seller asks a question and then without pausing for the answer, then goes on to spend another 20, 30 seconds justifying why they've asked the question.
I do it. I do it. I admit it. So
It's easy to do, right? Because we feel we need to justify. But then by the time we've got to the end of that, our prospect has forgotten the gist of the question. And we end up getting either no answer or a rambling answer or being told to repeat ourselves. Simple thing like flipping that. So you explain the context of the question and finish with the question and then stop. You're going to get a much more relevant answer. And I think there's day-to-day things that can have a really quick impact on the way salespeople approach conversations that sales methodologies forget. I'm not saying they don't have a place and they're not important, but I think they don't necessarily drive us to have good conversations. And without that, we don't have sales, we don't have clients.
yeah, yeah, and you know, I'm just thinking about this for myself as a seller, is what you said about having a valid reason, and being very clear on the reason why you're doing these things and asking these questions, and really that's what breeds the confidence. And when you've got the confidence in the questions that you're asking, that's when you don't need to justify so much. Or another thing that I've been guilty of is you ask a question, but then you offer two or three options. You know, so you say, "Oh, how do you approach this? Is it this or this or this?" And you need to just ask the question and let the person answer for themselves rather than lead in the witness, as they call it.
Yeah, yeah. The other one I think is really common is phrasing the same question in three different ways and confusing your prospect as a result. Again, I've done all of these things. I think I said right, in my cheesy intro, I don't think I was ever the best salesperson. I was okay, but it means I've then got 10 years of history to think back on and go, what was missing? And, we learn from mistakes. So I'm not saying everything I do in sales enablement is based on mistakes I made, because that'd be very selfish, but they act as good examples, because you start hearing things and going, oh, I used to do that too. This is a problem we can solve, rather than continually repeat, over years and years and years. Because I was doing stuff 10 years ago as an SDR that I still hear now.
Yeah.
And it's
And it'll make it more relatable. Like the stuff that you're doing at Leyton, I guess it makes it more relatable for the people there as well, right? Because you can actually, well, as I say, relate it to mistakes you've made.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's that. It gets us into a whole debate about, do you need sales experience to be in sales enablement? And I don't think you do. But there's no getting away from the fact that having that hands-on experience is really useful just to gain credibility, especially when you join a new business, because you can be talking at them, as a peer rather than just another trainer that's going to stand up in a room and talk at them for an hour.
Yeah,
but it certainly helps.
Yeah, I think it is relevant, and from speaking to many enablement leaders from different backgrounds in different industries and so on, you do hear that if it's someone in enablement that's come from more of an ops background, more of a marketing background, they each come with their own strengths and so on. Some come from an L&D or an HR background. But I think having that sales background in the eyes of the sellers that you're trying to enable, I think, yeah, it does. It gives you a bit more credibility. Um, for good or ill, I'll let you be the judge of that, whether they should judge it. Made.
Yeah,
But yeah, certainly, because they're going to say, well, otherwise it's like, well, what do you know? You're this or you're that. Which I'm not making a value judgment whether that's fair or not, but
no,
it
no.
does
I
exist.
think a lot of it stems from that kind of fear that people often have about I must be the only one that's kind of making these mistakes, or we can become very insular when we're trying to get better, or if we're having a little dip trying to figure out, what am I doing wrong here, and all the conversations you end up having, whether it's with your manager or with a trainer, are very one-on-one in that scenario because you're trying to fix a problem you have.
Mm,
Whereas if you do have someone stepping in that can go, I used to do that too. Here's how I fixed it. It might not work for everybody because there is none of that one size fits all, but at least you've got that kind of, you're not the only one anymore. Which I think in sales enablement we don't often talk enough, I think, about the power of those conversations, because we have a level of seniority over salespeople, but without the line manager responsibility. And I think that means the conversations we have with them can sometimes be a bit more, it's the word I'm looking for here, less diplomatic.
right.
If you know what I mean, they say things to us they wouldn't necessarily say to their manager. And I think we have a responsibility on that front too, which is again a whole other conversation. But you've got to have an element of confidentiality to it as well, and not go kind of telling on folk. But you can hear a lot more realities of what people are thinking sometimes in sales enablement than you can as a sales leader.
Yeah. Nice, nice. I was just about to say, it looks like the sun has really come out on your side, but it looks like it's gone back in now. So it's still
it's
over here, so
it's
I'm
right
not trying
there.
to get
My
blinded.
blinds are closed. It's a nice problem to have when you live in Scotland.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a rare problem to have as well. So
It's
yeah,
May. It's summer's finally decided to show up.
yeah, yeah. So okay, so bit of a left turn here. So DEI, I know that was something you wanted to talk about as well, particularly in sales. I guess just
Yeah.
to try and add a little bit of context here, we were talking before we started recording about how this varies across industries, but there's a trend, there's still a pattern there that you were talking about. Yeah, I don't want to lead you too much, but I mean, yeah, please talk to me about it, and we can kind of unpack it from there.
Yeah. So again, this is one of those topics that people might roll their eyes at, and at the same time maybe just not know how to address. And I'm not an expert, right, at all on these subjects, but it's something I do feel quite strongly about, and I've done a lot of research and I've had a lot of conversations about. And I think sales is, we're generalizing, right? Because every company is individual, every industry sector might be different, but I think it is still a very heavily male-dominated function, and kind of, let's say, white men of a certain age dominated. It's full of us millennials, right? It's kind of 25 to 40, 25 to 50. That's where we're at. And I think this is no judgment on that being true. It is not the fault of an individual that is who they are, right? But I think we can do more in sales generally to address the fact that I don't think most sales functions are representative of even the wider company they represent, never mind society as a whole. I may be giving away too much here, but I have worked in several organizations where the sales function has been all male. And intriguingly, the only one where that was not true was the 5 years I spent in recruitment,
Mhm.
where it was relatively 50-50 for the majority of the time. But some of this stems from the language we use. It stems from the fact that it takes time for these things to change. And it was always seen as a very stereotypically male function. But take job ads as an example. Been lots of studies done into the language you use that is deliberately or otherwise kind of gendered to a degree and attract different demographics. So the one thing we're guilty of in sales is all these kind of sport and military analogies. So they want a hustler, they want someone who's going to compete, they want somebody who's not afraid to win a battle or whatever you might say. All this stuff can actually be a real turn off to somebody who isn't that stereotype. And I include myself in that kind of category. If I read a job ad that's full of that terminology, I'm going, that place isn't for me. It's just not. And we can talk about hiring for culture, being that cultural fit. You want someone who's going to come in and get on with everybody. And that is true. But I think a lot of the time it is read deliberately or otherwise, again, as I need to hire replicas. And we see that managers hiring in their own image. They have a great conversation with somebody and subconsciously that's someone I want to go for a pint with after work. That's not necessarily the same as the person who did best at the interview. And I think we have to be very clear in these conversations that you can't attribute to malice what is actually ignorance. And by ignorance, I don't mean deliberate ignorance. I mean, I just don't know. So,
sure.
It was never going to come up in conversation because it's just not something I know about. So there's a whole host of things we could get into here. But there's got to be a level of understanding that if you want a diverse team, and the studies show that it will be a successful team if it is, you've got to do your bit to attract and make welcome people who don't look like or sound like or act like the team you have right now. And it's a weird environment to be in. So the example I would give is a very personal one, which is when I start at a new company, unless someone looks at my LinkedIn profile, I get read as average straight white guy who just happens to be a raving metalhead, and that's why he looks like he does. So I almost get these little insights into the conversations that people have amongst themselves, not realizing there's somebody there who is going to be made to feel very uncomfortable by that. 10, 12, 14 years ago, I was not self-confident or assured enough to raise that worry. Now, I don't care. I'm comfortable enough now in myself that I'm going to bring that up and go, whoa. And not necessarily to out myself or whatever, but to make it clear that you shouldn't be saying that. But what's happened is a safe space has been created where you can say things and get away with them. And it's those little kind of microaggressions, as we call them, that I think can make a sales function feel really unwelcoming to someone who is different from the majority. And I don't necessarily know that sales as a whole has done a very good job at addressing that. I am massively generalizing, but it is a very, very, at least in sales organizations I've seen and been part of, those talk about football, play golf at the weekend conversations are just the mainstay. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with either of those things. I mean, they're both highly dull, but having that as something you like, absolutely fine. Having it as 95% of the conversations your sales team has amongst themselves, maybe have an awareness that there's other people that you might be somewhat alienating as a result. So it's a very difficult conversation to have sometimes, because a lot of it sounds like the rants of someone who's just a bit of an outsider, rather than no, there's something important here that we need to address.
I was thinking of a couple of different ways we could go from it. I'm conscious we've only got a couple of minutes left, Dave, so I want to respect your time as well. But thanks for sharing that. And there was something, there were some statistics which I've heard before, that you shared with me before we started recording, about how different genders will apply for jobs with varying levels of experience. In a moment, perhaps you can share what that is. And I guess the follow-on question from that is thinking about the demographic makeup of sales or any profession, any industry. Is that an inherent fault in that? industry or in the system per se, or is it just inherent differences in individuals, genders, different demographics that are, as I say, just inherent in us? Um, Hopefully that's that question is
Yeah.
kind of getting at there.
No,
So
no, it
share.
is. I think the short answer is it's both. I mean, the statistics you mentioned, I don't know the exact ones off the top of my head, but there's been several studies done that you can look up about how men typically will find it easier to apply for jobs that they are probably 50, 60, 70% ticking the essential requirements of. Um, other genders typically will be looking for 80, 90% plus. And again, people will be different. This is just what some of the studies have found. So we we need to realize that more of our current sales demographics are going to apply for our jobs if we don't realize we need to speak to these other people. And I think some hiring managers are quite rigid in going, no, this is the essential criteria, this is who I need to speak to. And there's a level of kind of self-confidence that comes with a lot of salespeople as well. We're good at talking about ourselves sometimes because we're sellers, so we oversell as well. And I think there needs to be an awareness there. But to go back to your other point of kind of demographics, I think it is no one's fault what demographic boxes they tick. That's just who they are. And I'm not in any way suggesting that we should kind of immediately go and rip up every sales function and go, no, you are 90% male, therefore you are bad. Because it's not how we make change. You need to kind of, I think we just need to start by hiring practices, understanding what is putting off people who aren't, frankly, replicas of our existing team from applying. Why is that? How do we make sure that individuals and hiring managers in particular are trained to understand how their tendency to hire in their own image can be changed, because it's not usually a deliberate thing. It's the same, it's that classic sales mantra of you buy from people you like or people you get on with. Hiring managers hire people they like, people they get on with. It's a very innate human tendency. So we need to make sure we are hiring and interviewing in a way that realizes that that's often true. I'm not saying you shouldn't hire someone you like, but there should be other things at play there as well. And then you've got the whole idea that diversity is invisible and visible. If you have a team of 10 who are all straight white guys in their mid-30s, it looks homogenous, but there will be diversity within it. That could be socioeconomic status, it could be level of education, it could be English as a first language, it could be all elements of neurodiversity. There's so many things that affect that. It's not just about making a team more gender diverse, making a team more visibly diverse, racially or ethnically. We shouldn't think in that starker a way. And I think it's diminishing the conversation when people talk about diversity and just mean gender, just mean race, just mean disability.
Yeah,
there's a whole lot more to it. And I'm very aware, I say this as a middle-class 36-year-old white man. I have my own diversity boxes I tick, but it's a conversation that I think more people who maybe look like us should be having, rather than having kind of underrepresented communities always have to be the ones that fight for themselves.
Yeah.
So I will stop short of going on a massive semi-political rant, which I am prone to, but I hope that was at least in some way coherent.
Yeah, I was just trying to scratch the surface a little bit without too much of a Pandora's box there, because I know time and so on. So, but no, thank you, Dave. That's really useful and really just really interesting on all fronts. I sometimes feel like with these shows that maybe we should just pick one topic and just dig deep. So maybe that's a learning, shall we say, that I can take into.
You should have the long form version, which is 3 hours long.
Yeah. Sit. It'd be interesting.
No one's listening to that. At least not for 3 hours anyway.
Yeah. Then I can give you a proper intro, right? I can spend 10 minutes singing your praises before I'll hand over to you. Yeah.
Feel free.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. Is there anything else? Any final thoughts? Anything you wanna promote?
Only thing that comes to mind is on the 30th of May, I am hosting a enablement workshop at the Leyton offices here in Glasgow, which you, Mark, are very kindly co-hosting. So when he said, "Is there anything else that you want to talk about?" he knew exactly what I was
I
going to
already
say.
know the answer.
Not prepped at all. So that's the afternoon of May the 30th. If you want to register, then both Mark and I have shared lots of content with the link to register, completely free to attend. We'll be talking about kind of measuring impact and enablement, how you get started as a business. If you don't have an enablement function, what do you need? What can you use? And it will get us into all other topics as well, like AI, tech stack adoption, some of the things we've chatted about today as well. So should be good. Yeah, afternoon of May the 30th at the Leyton offices on George Square in Glasgow.
I hear there'll be snacks and drinks provided as well. Is that
There will be
right?
snacks and drinks
All right.
provided. Haven't decided what yet, but
I'll definitely be there then if there's snacks.
I am the world. I'm type 1 diabetic, but I'm the world's worst diabetic because I have a very sweet tooth. So when I say snacks, it's probably going to be something sweet and cake related.
Carrot sticks and hummus and
No, no. I mean, I can if you want, but
brilliant. Okay. Yeah, awesome. Well, look, I look forward to actually meeting you in person as well, Dave, because we've only done this
yeah,
virtually. So that's going to be great. But yeah, so
that's what's good about these events.
30th, isn't it? Yeah, the 30th of May.
Thursday the 30th. That's right. It's between
Yep.
1 and 5.
Awesome. Brilliant. Well, look, thank you for coming on. I always forget to say this, but for anyone watching, listening, please like and subscribe, leave a comment, all of that good stuff. It really helps the channel, and it helps these posts grow and so on. So I can have more brilliant guests on, such as Dave. So, right, final. Thank you. See you soon, Dave.
Thank you.
Cheers all.
Thanks very much.